A conducting square loop of side L and resistance R moves in its plane. You see, it's moving with some velocity in a plane with an uniform velocity perpendicular to one of its side. The magnetic induction B is constant in time and space pointing perpendicular and into the plane, okay, into the plane of the loop exist everywhere as shown in the figure. What is the current induced in the loop? So all that you have to find is, when this entire loop is going to move, what is the current that is going to get induced? That is what we are interested in. Okay, so now the very first thing that we have to do is how the current comes into the play. How do you think the current comes into the play? Since the area is going to change, if the area changes due to the electromagnetic induction, there is a possibility that the current comes in. For example, you see, I is equal to, current I is equal to E by R. Okay, we don't have to go for there. E is equal to d phi by dt it is. D phi by dt it is, which is equal to d by t of B into A. B into A cos theta. B into A cos theta it is. So now, if these three quantities changes with the time, if any one or sometimes even two quantities might change with time, if that happens, the EMF comes into the play, and I can just put the resistance of that accordingly into that, and I can find the entire current, right? This is the phenomenon. First, we don't have to worry about the direction of the current. First, we have to worry about is how the current is produced. If B changes, or if A changes, or if theta changes, your E comes in, your I comes in, and accordingly the things will happen. Okay, now listen. If B is going to change, let's check whether B is going to change. No, B is not going to change, because the whole thing is in an uniform magnetic field, one thing. So, second one we have to worry about is whether the area of the loop that is linked with the magnetic field is going to change or not. No, because it is moving with a constant velocity, so that the magnetic field that is linked with this will also remain the same as it moves along. Okay, so no problem with that. Whether theta is going to change? No way your theta is going to change. No way your theta is going to change. Because only if it rotates or change its orientation, there is a possible way in which your theta is going to change. Here, nothing is going to happen like that. Okay, the whole loop is going to move with a constant velocity in a uniform magnetic field. So, all the quantities in here are constants. So, on differentiating the constant, your E will be 0, so your current will also be 0. Easy and straightforward. This is how you have to understand each and everything. Okay, first you have to check whether the current itself is going to get produced or not. Only then we have to worry about the directions. Okay. A self-induction L of a solenoid of length L and an area of cross section A with a fixed number of turns increases. So, the area, the turns in a solenoid is kept constant, but still you have to increase your self-induction for the solenoid. So, which one do you think we have to do? You see, this is a direct problem. Where the self-induction of the solenoid is directly proportional to A and it is inversely proportional to I. Actually, there is an expression, a continuous expression. I am not going to go into that. The self-induction of a solenoid is directly proportional to A and it is inversely proportional to I. So, to increase the self-induction of the solenoid, what we have to do is we have to increase A and we have to decrease I. So, among all the options, you see first one both increases. That is wrong. In the second one, I decreases and A increases. This could possibly be our answer. And in the option C, I increases and A decreases, which is also wrong. Here both decreases in the option D. That is also wrong. So, just by seeing the relationship, we can directly conclude the answer by saying that I decreases and then A increases for the self-induction of a solenoid. Self-induction of a solenoid is a direct formula that you will find in your textbook, which says this particular relationship. The magnetic flux linked with the coil is given by an equation phi equal to, phi, Greek symbol phi equal to 5t squared plus 3t plus 16. The induced EMF in the coil at time t equal to 4 will be. So, it is a straightforward question. So, here the answer goes like this. So, you are supposed to find the EMF E out of the given flux. So, here what we are supposed to do is we have to just plug in the equation into a differential one. See, where E is equal to minus of d phi by dt is the equation, which is equal to, on differentiating the whole equation with respect to time, 5t square plus 3t plus 16, which is 10t plus 3 it is. 10t plus 3 it is. And now all we have to do is we have to just plug in the time 4 which is given to us. So, the answer goes like this, minus of 10 into 4 plus 3 it is. So, 40 plus 3 is 43. So, the answer is minus 43 volt. So, the answer is minus 43 volt it is. It's a straightforward and an easy question where you don't have to do much. You have to just take the equation of phi, which is nothing but the flux, the magnetic flux is given in terms of t, and if you are going to differentiate the magnetic flux with respect to time, we end up with the EMF that is produced by it at time t equal to 4 seconds. It's a straightforward question. The ratio between the total intensity of magnetic field at equator to the poles is. Okay, now we are supposed to find the magnetic field in two different parts of the earth. One is at the equator and the other one is at the pole. So, what difference do you think is going to happen in here? You see, if we are at the equator, the dip circle will show 0 degrees. Okay, if we are at the poles, your dip circle will show 90 degrees. See, at equator, the dip angle is 0 degrees. At poles, the dip angle is 90 degrees. So, the magnetic field B is equal to root of BH square plus BV square, BH square minus BV square, and we already know that the horizontal component of the magnetic field is nothing but B cos theta, and the vertical component of the magnetic field is B sin theta. So, listen, first at equator the dip angle, okay, at equator the dip angle is going to be what? 0 degree. It is going to be 0 degree. So, if I put 0 degree in the place of delta here and here, BV completely goes to 0. We are only left with BH. So, we are left only with BH. So, B is equal to BH, but this time it stays as B itself. It stays as B itself. On the equator, the magnetic field is just B. Okay. Then at poles, at poles, again delta is equal to 90 degrees. Again delta is equal to 90 degree. So if I put 90 in the place of delta here, your horizontal component completely goes to 0. So you are left only with the vertical component, which is also B. So listen, equal to B, which is also equal to B. So now listen, they are asking us to find the ratio between the total intensity of the magnetic field. So B equator by B vertical is equal to B by B is equal to 1 by 1, is equal to 1 by 1. So this is the answer. So this is the answer for the ratio of the intensity of the magnetic fields at the pole to the equator. Both are same actually. Okay, since both are same, if I am going to put it in the ratio is 1:1. Clear? We move to the next one. Here, an air-cored solenoid of length 30 centimeter and the area of cross section of 25 centimeters squared and the number of turns is 800, carries a current of 2.5 amperes and the current is suddenly switched off in a brief time of 10 power minus 3 seconds, ignoring the variation of the magnetic field near the ends of the solenoid. The average back EMF induced across the ends of the open switch in the circuit would be. So what do you mean by the back EMF? So back EMF is nothing but the opposing EMF that gets produced because of the change in the magnetic flux. So what we are supposed to find in here is, we are supposed to find the flux that gets induced in here. Okay, and then if I divide the flux with respective time, I will get the respective EMF. Okay, that is how the things are going to work in here. Okay, see, again the basic thing, flux is equal to N into B into A. It is nothing but N into B into A. Okay, whereas N in here is not the normal N. N stands for the number of turns, so better I will write it as capital N. So B stands for the magnetic field inside the solenoid. What is the magnetic field inside the solenoid? It is mu naught times N into I. Mu naught Ni is the magnetic field inside the solenoid. Now I will just plug that into this. So phi is equal to N into mu naught times N by L into I into A. So this is the flux. I will also reduce this as flux is equal to mu naught N squared I into A by L, and in order to find the EMF that gets produced, what I have to do is E is equal to phi by T it is. E is equal to phi by T it is. So first we have to substitute all the values that is given to us. 4 pi into 10 power minus 7 into what is N squared in here? N stands for the number of turns, which is 800 squared, into what is the value of the current? It is 2.5 amperes into what is the area of the coil? It is pi into R squared, right? So pi into, okay, instead of that, the cross section area itself is directly given, but it is given in terms of centimeter square. So to convert it to meter square, I will multiply it with 10 power minus 4 divided by the time that is given to us is 10 power minus 3 seconds. 10 power minus 3 seconds, right? So these are the things that we are supposed to substitute in here. So after substituting everything that is given to us in the question, then all that we are left with is to multiply, but we are left with L, right? Where is the length of the solenoid? It is 30 centimeters. Okay. So 30 into 10 power minus 2 again. Okay. So this 30 into 10 power minus 2. So if we simplify all the values that are given to us, we will end up with the answer where E is equal to, it is 6.54 volt. Because I am not going to do the calculation for this, it's easy for you because it's a simple multiplication and division stuff. So I want you to do the calculation, and the answer for this is 6.54 volt. So the basic phenomenon in here is, you see, electromagnetic induction where E is equal to phi by T, and phi indicates the flux inside a solenoid, which is nothing but magnetic field times area. Again we find the magnetic field inside a solenoid, and the equation for it goes like this, and I will plug in all the values for that in here to get my E. So this is how the problem is done in here. So we move to the next question. The Faraday's laws are the consequence of the conservation of the energy. Is the law of conservation of the energy. That is the consequence of the Faraday's law. Okay, there is no much of the things to explain. It's a theoretical question. So the next one is, which of the statement is true for the Gauss law? Okay, which of the statement is true for the Gauss law? You see, first one, all the charges, whether inside or outside the Gaussian surface, contributes to the electric flux. Totally wrong, because electric flux is equal to Q enclosed by epsilon naught. Only charges enclosed are taken into the account. So first statement is wrong. The electric flux depends upon the geometry of the Gaussian surface. That is wrong, because it doesn't matter what shape your Gaussian surface is, as long as your Gaussian surface encloses the charges, the flux that is coming out of the Gaussian surface will be Q enclosed by epsilon naught. So the second statement is also wrong. The Gauss theorem can be applied to non-uniform electric fields. No, it is not possible. Gauss law cannot be applied for the non-uniform electric fields. It is applicable only for the charges which are constant in their magnitudes, which produces constant electric field. Okay, what is the fourth statement? The electric field over the Gaussian surface remains continuous and uniform at every point. Yes, the electric field over the Gaussian surface will remain the same and uniform throughout. So the option D is your answer. You see, from the beginning I read all the statements and I asked myself the question whether that is possible. If that is not possible, I instantly eliminated them, which brought me to the correct answer right away. So this is how it is done again in here. So welcome back, students. So now we are going to see the last set of problems. So the first problem goes as, if a charge on a body is 1 nanocoulomb, then how many electrons are present on the body? So you see, the quantity of charge is given to you and they are asking you to find the number of electrons that are linked with it. So capital Q is equal to N into E. So capital Q on the left side is 1 into 10 power minus 9 coulomb, which is equal to N into 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 is the magnitude of the charge of the electron. Okay, where N is what they are asking us to find, where small n is equal to 1 into 10 power minus 9 divided by 1.6 into 10 power minus 19, which is equal to 0.625 into 10 power plus 10. So this is equivalent to 6.25 into 10 power 9 is equivalent to 10 power 9. So this is what it is. So it's a straightforward question. What you have to do is you have to find the number of electrons that together are required to form 1 nanocoulomb of the charges, and we have found that the number of electrons are 6.25 into 10 power 9 electrons are required to do that. So this is easy and straightforward question. Here the direction of the induced current in the coil A and B in the situations shown in the figure. Here if you see, we have a bar magnet and we move the bar magnet to the left and we have to indicate the direction of the current, okay, in A and in the B. Now let's see what is going to happen. If we try to move the bar magnet to the left, what happens? The current gets induced in that in such a way that it opposes the motion of the bar magnet. So how do you think the direction of the current should get induced on the coil A? What I know for sure is the south pole should develop in here. South pole should develop in the face of the coil so that it opposes the bar magnet that is coming towards it. So the current flows in the clockwise direction. So the current flows in the clockwise direction like this. Since north pole is moving away, the face on the left side of B should be south to push it this side. So in here the current flows in the anti-clockwise direction. So we coming to the option, see, option B suits our criteria. So Q to P in the coil A and X to Y in the coil B. So this is how the things really are. Okay. The conducting circular loop is placed in an uniform magnetic field. B is equal to 0.025 Tesla. With its plane perpendicular to the loop, the radius of the loop is shrink at a constant rate of 1 millimeters per second. The induced EMF when the radius is 2 centimeter. So here what happens is, as the radius of the loop shrinks, then the EMF gets induced in the loop. And we are supposed to find the amount of EMF that is going to get induced. So the formula goes like E is equal to d phi by dt it is. Okay, just forget about the negative sign, because since it is going to shrink, we can just leave it off. Otherwise, we understand that the EMF that is going to get developed in that is going to be the opposite of the action that is going to cause the EMF. We know that. Okay, so phi in here is nothing but d by dt of B into A. d by dt of B into A, and now because of the change in the radius of the loop, the EMF gets developed in that. So now listen, E is equal to B into pi into R squared is the area of the loop. Pi into R squared is the area of the loop, and now what I am going to do is I am going to differentiate this, whereas magnetic field that is falling on that loop is going to remain the same, only the radius part is going to change. So E is equal to B into pi into 2R into dr by dt into dr by dt. Now all we have to do is plug in the values that are given to us in the question, where E is equal to, the magnetic field is 0.025 into pi into 2 into what is R? R is nothing but the radius, which is 2 into 10 power minus 2 meters, and dr by dt is given to you as 1 millimeter per second. So I have to convert this into meter per second. So 1 millimeter is 1000 meters. So 10 power minus 3 meter per second it is. So we have everything with us. You see 0.025 pi 2 into 2 10 power minus 2 and 10 power minus 3. So listen very carefully. 2 into 2 will be 4 and this 25, I mean 0.025 can be written as 25 into 10 power minus 3. Okay, so into pi into 4 into 10 power minus 5. This is how I will rewrite everything. Clear? Now 25 into 4 is 100. So 100 pi into 10 power minus 8. 100 pi into 10 power minus 8, where it is nothing but pi into 10 power minus 6 volt. But if you see the options, we have mu in it. Mu represents 10 power minus 6. So E is equal to pi mu V. So this is the EMF that is going to get induced. In the circular loop that is placed in an uniform magnetic field. You see, the calculation is quite simple and straightforward it is. All you have to do first is, you have to differentiate the area, knowing that the EMF gets induced because the radius of the loop is going to change. And I have accordingly wrote the equation, and I took all the values from the question and I have plugged them in accordingly. So this is how the things really work here. So we move to the next question. Here the Faraday's law or consequence of conservation of energy. Okay, here the conservation of energy plays the major role, because you see, we produce a magnetic field. I mean, we produce a magnetic field, and that magnetic field, what happens? It changes with time. If it changes with time, what happens then? It consequently produces an EMF in loop. That is what is the Faraday's law. Okay, when the magnetic flux linked with the coil changes, then that gets converted to what? The EMF. So one form of energy gets converted to the other form. Okay, it is not the conservation of charge, it is not the conservation of magnetic field. It is based on the law of conservation of energy. Only because of that, the change in the magnetic flux linked with the coil produces an EMF in that coil. Okay, now the next one. In this question, it goes as a thin circular conducting ring of radius r is falling with a vertical plane in a horizontal magnetic field B as shown in the figure. The potential difference developed across the ring when the speed is, okay, so now what we are supposed to do in here is, because of this ring falling vertically in a uniform magnetic field, we have to find the EMF that is going to get developed across the ends of this wire. So listen very carefully. I am just drawing a battery in here just to indicate that the potential is going to get developed across this P and R. Okay, it is not the original battery that I am connecting in here. So first what I am going to do is, we already know that the EMF, the equation of the EMF E for a body that is moving with a velocity v in a magnetic field is given as B into L into V it is. B into L into V it is. So all we have to just do is, we have to resubstitute what L is. L represents nothing but the length. What is that? Not the length of the semicircle, but the length of the distance between this P and R, which is 2 times R into V. So E is nothing but 2 into B into R into V. Okay, well and good. Now if you just have a look at this, this is the option that is representing whatever we say, B into R into V times 2, and R is the higher potential and then R is the higher potential that we are looking for. So that is our answer. So that is our answer. So with this note, I'll just stop this session.